Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast, where we aim to inspire and motivate people to never give up on themselves or their dreams. We will chat with highly successful people from all walks of life and discuss what motivates and drives them to successfully attack life head on and never give up. Welcome to episode number 56 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Worth, and today's theme of the day is authenticity. Our quote of the day comes to us from Janet Louise Stephenson. Authenticity requires vulnerability, transparency, and integrity. It is my pleasure to bring you today's episode. Our guest on our podcast has found his authenticity, and he just completed his 100th paid speaking event within 1 year's time. Although nobody can say they know exactly what somebody else is going through, we can all learn from each other and become better versions of ourselves. With that said, I'm honored to introduce Loren Michaels Harris. Loren, I'd like to welcome you to the No Quit Living podcast.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
I appreciate it. The first question we ask everybody is, are you ready to make it happen?
Am I ready to make it happen? I would say like yesterday.
That's the first time we've had that answer, so I like that. So as we're always looking to motivate and inspire our listeners, the number one objective is to make people think about never giving up and keep going, whether that's business, life, personal. I wanted to ask if you could share either a story about perseverance or perhaps a challenging time that tested you, but you kept on going and didn't quit.
Oh, well, absolutely. Man, there's so many to choose from, but I like to always go back to the scene of the crime is how I refer to it. And for me, it was during my youth, my most informative years, specifically between the ages of 9 and 15, wherein in between those ages, I experienced 22 different homes within the state foster system. So, I literally went from 1 Wednesday of 1 week, living in a normal middle-class home where I'd been ever since I was a week old. I didn't know it had been just a week old, but that's the brunt of that. But from that Wednesday to the next, the loss of my adoptive mom, and from that lifestyle and history straight into the foster system 1 week later with, stripped of the name I'd always had and out of the neighborhood and home that I'd always been in, the school, all my friends, my dog, my Cub Scout troop, everything. Just and like I said, including my name. So, a completely different name, a different first name and a different last name, all in the span of 7 days. So those years from 9 to 15 were really the proving ground for me on how important it is, and it specifically then was to just keep going. And as a kid, you don't really have a playbook, which now in retrospect, I'm very grateful that I didn't, because that was where I learned about following my instincts and listening to the voice that is connected to what I say is the creator, which is my first mind. And it really started to groom me, if you will, in two things. Primarily, being forced to learn that the best things in my life are the things that I allow to pass through me and not the things that I try to force from me. And then secondly, it really, really opened up my mind that to the fact that living authentically is so important, because all you have are your truths. And I had to immediately link into that grappling hook of truth and look for it in everything around me, or else I would have been led down a lot of roads that I probably wouldn't have wanted to go down. I would have believed a lot of things that were meant to belittle me and destroy me that weren't true. But I immediately started looking around within my world for things that resembled the truth. And, there's a reason. There's a real reason they say that the truth has a ring to it. Because when you're a kid and you're in an adult world, and they're not always adults that have your best interest at heart, which is what you think adults stand for when you're 9, but suddenly you see that that's not the case. So it was that experience that really really led me to, just moving along. And I learned immediately that it wasn't about trying to get over something or get from underneath something, or as people would always tell me, oh, don't worry, you'll find your way around this. And it wasn't until I realized it was all about the going through. Because when I would go through something, I always found that at the other end of that growth tunnel, there was a W and there was the R, that go with go, which turned that experience from just a simple go through to a grow through. And that actually is how it all started for me. And that's why today I dedicate my life to sharing those things that I know to be true, not just because I read them or watched them in a motivational video, but they served me well. They saved my life. Not every kid gets out of that foster system alive, believe me, you. And I started that first Wednesday night in a room with 3 other boys. And when I turned 18 and tried to find them, I found out that none of the 3 made it out of the system alive. So immediately, I decided my voice was going to be not only for myself, but for those 3 and for any child, before, during, or after the foster system, or any system, even in their own homes or just in their own schools, or and when I say kids, I don't mean just kids when you're a kid, because no matter how old we get, there's still that place in our spirits of when we were innocents, when we were children. And a lot of people carry a lot of pain. I stay away from the term baggage, because they make it sound like it's such a bad thing, having baggage. But baggage is nothing more than proof that you've packed for a journey worthwhile. If you're going anywhere for any amount of time, you're going to need some baggage. So it's all this sort of stuff that has here I am, 55 years old today, and living in a way, in a mindset that if you had told me back then that this is what it would all equate to, I would have never believed you. But I'm just so grateful. I've made my way through a life of anger, where everything literally was balled into a fist, which forced me to automatically have a death grip on all the things I claimed I didn't want. And then I transitioned through the process from the clenched fist to the pointed finger, where I blamed, but still I realized during that process that when I pointed, I was really only 75%. I was 75% into a full fist, so I was only missing the 2 fingers, 25%. So, and those 3 that were rolled up to point, so that I could point, there was still enough room for me to stuff all those exact same things down in there, just like when I had a full fist. So I had to move from that to the point of forgiveness, and now I live a life where my fingers aren't pointing, but my palms are pointing towards the ceiling, towards the sky, because I've been able to forgive, and when you forgive, you release, and when you release, you let things go, which means now the front row seats of my life aren't always occupied by people and situations that aren't healthy enough to be sitting there or be present there. But now I have room for things that are meant to enhance my life and allow me to enhance the lives of those around me. There's always a seat. I've learned that the best things in your life, they don't come to your dance to stand around on the walls as wallflowers. They want to come, but they want to dance, but they want to sit down and rest when they need to. And if there's no place for healthiness there, where's it going to go?
Well, I appreciate you sharing that backstory, and I think sometimes you talk about make or breaking you, and obviously you came from a tough situation, and as you mentioned, just from those formative years in your early age, and those 3 people that didn't make it out, obviously you did. And I think the word forgiveness is something that, I don't know if people compare it, or the analysis is you're being humble or you're admitting defeat, but I think it takes a real strong person to be able to forgive, and it's much easier said than done. So one of the things we utilize in our show is a daily quote, and I was curious if you have a favorite quote.
I do. Does it have to be from someone other than myself?
It does not.
Okay. Well, I'm a memes kind of guy. I really do. I believe in things coming through us and not from us. And the quote that I love the most because it allows for a starting point, a starting place. And in my coaching practice, I always look for that in everyone. And that's what hopefully they're looking for. But my favorite quote is to never forget that you've already lived the hard part. You've already lived the hard part. You know, so many of us spend so many years of our lives, decade after decade after decade, constantly trying to create a new canvas to fit whatever wall we're trying to hang our present or future life on for the world to view. And when really it's just a matter of utilizing the idea of modern technology and simply cutting and pasting. You know, it takes a certain level of courage to look directly over the shoulder of the life you've already lived and honor the truth for what it is, the only thing in the universe that never changes, and cut and paste your pit moments, your power moments, your moments of action or of inaction, and everything in between. Because the moment we start trying to change it, it becomes a version of the story. And, you know, like I said, the truth is the only thing in the universe that never changes. So it's a good place to start with the truth, your truths, because they are proof that you're an authority, that you're an expert, and that you're a survivor. You can always look at where you were and what you've gone through and look at where you are. And you still are going to see something you're going through, because no matter what, there will always be some battle that will rage. But it's from point A to point B that matters. Yes.
No, I like that, and that is a good quote, and I appreciate you sharing that. One thing you mentioned is that you are 55 years old, and I was curious, in today's day and age, it's so difficult and it's challenging. What motivates you to keep going every single day?
Well, because finally I am living beyond what I was ever able to dream. And to get out of the dark spaces that I had to travel through, I had to dream to the nth degree. So it's just further proof of, you know, the higher you aim, the higher you're going to reach. And I'm not all bogged down in a world of dragging my feet through the quicksand anymore because of dragging others, the issues of others, the negativity, the toxicity of others. I don't carry that with me anymore. So it's just a very freeing experience. It liberates me on a daily basis. I love goals, but I set them and I back away as quickly as possible, because for me, I believe the process, what I do every single day, is what directly catapults me, thrusts me directly into my goals. I don't have control over who's going to hire me or who isn't. I have no control over who's going to, say, hey, I'd love to coach with you, or hey, I want to come and hear you speak, or any of that. When I was looking for the love of my life, I knew immediately that if I don't work on the process, it's not about where is that Mr. or Miss Right. It's about what am I doing to be that person that Mr. or Miss Right is looking for. Because if I don't do what I need to do, I could be standing right in front of every opportunity that I've dreamed of, but I haven't made myself worthy of that dream or that opportunity. And when it looks directly at me, it won't recognize me because I haven't done the work to be recognizable. So that's kind of what keeps me moving forward, because in order to get something, to have something, to be something, I have to do the work.
I like that you mentioned that. That's something we talk about all the time, which is the word action. And you need to do the work. You need to take the action. And obviously you do that. And I appreciate that. And I appreciate you sharing that. So here's a question for you. If you could go back and give the 20-year-old version of yourself only one piece of advice, what would it be?
Wow, the 20-year-old self. Piece of advice I would give myself would most likely be find the volume lever. Find that volume lever within your mind, within your spirit, that controls what your mind says to you. Because that was the one thing that nearly took me out of this game several times. In my 20s is where I really experienced a rough go at it with suicidal thoughts and suicidal attempts, and it was that part where you're trying to find yourself, that part of your life, and it's difficult when you see wonderful things being shown on the screens inside your mind, but the theater that you're actually sitting in the world doesn't show the same movie ever. And so I guess I would say, when you start talking to yourself, some people call it that stinking thinking. And it's a hard thing, because when we hear ourselves speaking with and to us, it sounds like it's me. It sounds like it's us. And it can be a tough thing to discern, but I learned once I got my hand on that lever that controls that volume. It was chaos that I needed to turn down. It was nothing, truth I never needed. I spent many years looking for the volume to turn truth up. And that was really backwards, because the truth comes in and goes out and stays, because it never changes, at the same level of everything about it. But it's the chaos, it's the fiction, it's the lies, it's the tricks, it's the deceit. It's everything that's arranged in this world to make you think everything other than what you should that is changing. So it's the volume that's changing, not the volume of truth. And it took me 2 decades, all of my 20s, all of my 30s, and actually, I'd say a good portion of my 40s before I really, really found that lever.
Well, I'm glad you found it, and I appreciate you sharing that candid story about your 20s. I think it goes back to what I said, is what doesn't, something doesn't break you, it makes you, and I really appreciate you sharing that with us. So I wanted to ask if there's anything exciting that you're working on that you'd like to share with our listeners.
Oh my goodness, yes. So much going on. Putting together my very first event, my live event. I just finished doing my 100th paid speaking gig in just 1 year. I kicked my career off August 26th of last year, and I just finished doing my first event, which was an event with some pretty big speakers out in Los Angeles. First time in 100 speeches that I had shared the stage. I'm now up to speech number 105, and my next event is coming up in October, just a few days before my wedding. I'm getting married October 14th, and I'll be on the stages with people like John Wesley Brown and others out in Orange County, California. And that will be my second event like that. And then the third event will be in January, which is actually my own event in Las Vegas. So I'm just so honored and humbled to be, with just like even being here, honestly, on this wonderful show, listening to, what you do to help make your impact, and the people that are your followers and listeners, that it means something to them to have a place to go to hear this kind of content. So that's what I'm working on. But really, it's all back to the process, because there are things in my life right now that tomorrow can be totally different. I wake up every day and it's something that people go, how did that happen? Oh my God, how did that happen? And so I'm just working on every day being a better version of Loren than I was the day before.
I like that. That's something we often talk about on our show, is you can't control yesterday. You can deal with today, but you can't focus on tomorrow. But one of the things we often touch on is the importance of trying to be the best version of yourself. Don't compare yourself to somebody else. Don't compare yourself to a neighbor, a friend, But I think it's really important is that every day you wake up and you say, how can I be a better version today, Friday, than I was yesterday, Thursday, or Saturday versus Friday? And just wanted to say congrats on the 100 paid speaking gig. That's awesome. You're up to 105, and congratulations on getting married.
Thank you.
Married in October, too. Very, very exciting stuff. So here's a little different question. If you could have dinner with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Dinner with anyone, dead or alive. Well, I've heard this question asked to other people before. You'd think I would have kind of gotten ready for that, huh? Well, you know, I know this is going to sound strange, but I really would, because no one ever speaks about this. But I know this sounds crazy, and I'm not crazy, and I'll explain it. But I would want to speak with Hitler, because here's why. I mean, I had to pick one, but there's a bunch of them that are in that same kind of a grouping as far as the impact they made in history. Hitler, Stalin, bin Laden, people like that. Here's why I would want to have dinner and speak with him, because I believe that, okay, just like we're influencers, but for positive and for change and for growth, they were not, at the end of the day, that's not how it ended for them. But I believe they started with the same opportunity to use their talents. They say he was very charismatic. And I often hear people say, if he would have used his gifts for positive, what he may have done with those gifts in this world for betterment. And so I would really want to know where it switched. I'd want him to tell me, when did you change the jersey for the team you played for? What was the number one thing that allowed this incredible gift from God to get so far away from you? Because there's so many of us showing and leading and influencing people on how to use that gift from where we begin or where we grow into to aid and help others. But what about those people? What about those people who are right now, right at the cusp on that fence where it can go one way or the other? There's always only two choices, the right one and the wrong one. And I would really want to know. I don't think something like that comes up and just says, hey, guess what? I want to turn you into a person who really does the opposite of helping people in this world. I don't think it doesn't come that obvious. It had to have slipped in through a crack somewhere.
It's so interesting you say that. And I was having a conversation last week with a friend of mine, and we were just talking about the same topic of Hitler and somebody who had such an influence, and as you mentioned, in such a bad and negative way. And the conversation was very simple. And we said, imagine if somebody that powerful was able to do something positive. Imagine the negative impact he had on millions of people's lives, not only then, but for generations to come. The question, as you said, you'd want to ask him, and obviously it's easy to be a Monday morning quarterback, but you want to ask him, what went wrong, where and why, and God, imagine the possibility of if he had put and taken all of that power and influence and put it into something positive. I mean, we could have been talking about him and what he did for generations to come as far as in such a good light as opposed to the negative that it does. So I'm glad you shared that, because it's the best part about the show, which is just making people think a little bit outside the 9 dots and think a little bit outside the box. So I appreciate you sharing that, because you are definitely the first person that took that spin on that question. So Loren, I truly appreciate your time. And before we let you go, I wanted to ask if you have any parting words for our listeners.
Oh, yeah, I do. And this is for each and every person. When you see someone or you hear a story and you're inspired and you think, wow, it's so good to hear someone say they made it out, that they made it through, and they're living a life that most people dream about. I want you to remember something. It's never about you being outside of the story watching. Everything I said, and there's so much more, but you are not outside of the story. If you're here with us, if you're here within listening, and this has made its way to you, it's because you're within our story and we're within yours. So I ask you to just remember that and know that it is very possible, and it's most likely probable, that you are a person just like us who one day will be at the door of an intersection opportunity where someone or someones will be there, and you will be the person in this world that has that one phrase with that one line that contains the one word that changes even one person's life forever. And you do that, and you will have lived a life that most people dream about, and that's the truth.
That's some powerful stuff, and I appreciate that. So last question, I promise it's the easiest one, is what's the best way for our listeners to follow you or connect with you?
Well, you can always come to my website, which is Loren, Loren, Michaels, Michaels, Harris, Harris, LorenMichaelsHarris.com, and leave me a message, or follow me on Facebook. I have a public profile page, which is Loren Michaels Harris. YouTube, same thing. Twitter, Instagram, and then my personal Facebook page is Loren Harris, Loren. Or just Google me, and that will lead you to all kinds of things. So I'm here if you want me.
That is awesome, Loren. I truly, truly appreciate not only your time, but your insight as well, and I look forward to hopefully speaking with you soon.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for having me.
To sum up today's episode and our theme of the day, authenticity, it took Loren some time, but he finally has found his authenticity. From a rough upbringing within the state foster system, from the ages of 9 to 15, Loren was moved 22 different times with multiple name changes. Loren also dealt with suicidal thoughts during his 20s. However, Loren found forgiveness as he traveled through his growth tunnel. When dealt with a tough upbringing, Loren fought through and kept on going. When the going got tough, Loren got going. In his parting words, Loren shared something great with us. He suggested for all of us to aim high, and he said that the higher you aim, the higher you're going to reach. So our call to action today is this: aim higher. Whatever your goal or goals are, increase them. If it's helping 2 people, try to help 3. If your goal is to schedule 4 appointments today, aim for 5. By aiming higher, you never know. You might not just hit your target, but exceed that target, which makes you one step closer to your greatness. And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.